The rebel numbers grew from 1,000 to 20,000 as newly liberated slaves burned cane fields and refineries in order to destroy the system that had enslaved them. Within 3 days, the most profitable plantations in the Americas had been laid waste, 184 sugar plantations and 1,000 coffee farms. Whites and mixed-race people fled to the capital city for mutual protection. From there, they watched firestorms on all horizons.
You've got a fiery cataclysm of enormous scale. I mean, the people on ships in the harbor supposedly could read their mail by the light of these fires that were, 10, 15, 20 miles away, to give you some faint idea of what this would have been like if you were there.
The eruption of violence put Toussaint Louverture in a difficult position. His own fortunes were tied to the plantation system, and he had straddled the white and black worlds for some 15 years.
Toussaint was no longer a slave. He didn't have the mentality of a slave. He was the owner of 2 or 3 plantations. He was not of the same class anymore. His interests were different from the interests of the masses.
But Toussaint's first reaction to the raging violence was based neither on money nor race. It was personal. He went back to the plantation where he had been born to protect his former owners.
It's true that Toussaint Louverture did return to the plantation in the early days of the insurrection and kind of maintained order there. And there's the question of why. Why would he do that? I think Toussaint was somebody who understood the value of humanity in many ways, right? And I think he probably had gained that precisely from being on the receiving end of slavery.
Back in the capital city, as Toussaint helped his former master flee the violence, Saint-Domingue's whites repelled assault after assault. They soon regrouped and launched their own offensive. Saint-Domingue's mixed-race population had so far retained its fragile alignment with the whites. To ensure that continued, Sontonax created a representational council on the island and invited mixed-race citizens to serve. He even brought mixed-race men into the colonial government.
And a lot of white planters are really, really upset about that and see him as a really destructive force.
The white planters had cause for worry. Less than 2 years after joining the rebellion, Toussaint Louverture had risen to the top of the rebel army.
I am Toussaint Louverture. My name is perhaps known to you.
In 1793, he wrote an open letter to the island's disenfranchised.
I have undertaken vengeance. I want liberty and equality to reign in Saint-Domingue. I work to bring them into existence. Unite yourselves to us, brothers, and fight with us for the same cause.
With his letter, he announces 2 things. He announces, first of all, his commitment to the process, to the project of emancipation. And he announces his presence as a leader, maybe even the leader. He has gained great respect from his followers. And with this proclamation, he's essentially saying, you want freedom, and I'm the one who's going to bring you that freedom. So I'm the person to follow in this regard.
But Toussaint at this time was addressing the wider world too. He was particularly focused on Spain.
The Spanish wanted to wrestle the colony away from France for 2 reasons. First, the colony was very, very prosperous in spite of the war. And second, that prosperity was used by the French Revolution to combat them in Europe.
Spain controlled Saint-Domingue's neighboring colony, so in June of 1793, Toussaint struck a deal. Spanish garrisons just over the border provided guns and ammunition to the slave army and tipped the balance their way. Toussaint's forces captured 3 cities within 8 months. Saint-Domingue's white planters were desperate. Many hated the new order in France. In a treasonous move, they invited the British to help put down the slave rebellion. Now, the empires of France, Spain, and England, along with a vast army of former slaves, were fighting for control